I am speaking to Patrick Downie today. Patrick, of course, is involved with this really, really cool um, fund, but not only is he involved with this cool fund that's going to be bringing a lot of awareness to Indigenous people in Canada, but he's also Gord Downie's brother. Patrick, thanks for taking the time to chat with us today. Just first off the bat, I want to ask you, how important is it to you to raise awareness around these causes that your brother was so passionate about?
Well, thanks for having me, Jason. And really, we sort of carry forth Gord's wishes and his passion with a lot of pride, and we work really hard to carry on his message and what he really cared about. So, in terms of you know. Speaking about his legacy and all the things he represented in his art and his feelings. We probably do this with the most pride and love, and knowing that we're really carrying on what he really cared about in terms of the future of Canada.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody knows the band and knows the history of the hip, your brother made no qualms about the fact that he was very outspoken about the rights of Indigenous people in Canada. And I think it was one of the things that really, I think a lot of people love the fact that when Gord opened his mouth, he backed it up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whatever came out of there, he was ready to back up. He wouldn't just shoot his mouth off about something unless he was this is just coming from somebody who would notice this from an outsider's point of view as a fan and someone who definitely followed him. I don't think he would open his mouth about something unless he really could back it up, unless he was educated on it, or unless he was passionate about it.
Yeah, and this wasn't, just a recent thing with him. He has been spending a lot of time in Indigenous communities and developed a lot of relationships, particularly with communities in the north, and came to know a lot of people and the issues of these communities. And yeah, you're right. He wouldn't really go into anything and speak and put himself out there without really knowing everything that surrounds all these issues and the inequities and all the problems that we don't really face that often in day-to-day life in more populated parts of the country.
And I think that the fact that there's light that's being shone on communities like you're mentioning that might not always be at the forefront of the news, that might not always be at the forefront of the conversation, but are in deep need of not only recognition, they're in deep need of assistance, and of people realizing that we're all in this together, and at the end of the day, we all really need to support each other. And I find that you feel that there's a shift in the world right now. There's a real battle that's going on. Not only in Canada, obviously in the US, but there seems to be a real battle of powers, and there seems to be a real shift on what's going on, where we have an opportunity to make a lot of changes, or we could really, really do a lot of damage. And I love the fact that there's something like this that's going on where you guys are really, really trying to shine the light on something that's very, very positive and things that need to happen right here in our own country.
Yeah, I think back on Gord's last HIP show in Kingston, and the call he made to the Prime Minister and all the Canadians watching across the country. He really took advantage of that time to put out that word, and I suppose people thought that was really bold and really brave, but considering what's happening now, where it's really something of which everybody is talking about, everyone is affected by all the unrest. You really hate to see that it takes somebody dying in front of our eyes to really wake everybody up. But this is where we're at right now, and there is a lot of very positive things happening, and it really gives voice to all the injustice, all the disparity, and basic human rights that, we all deserve. And just because you don't see it does not mean it's not going on. So, you know, uh, here we are, and I'm glad these conversations are happening.
I couldn't agree more. All right, so tell me a bit about the DWF, or the Gord Downie and Downie Wenjack Fund.
Well, it's it really is. It was built to bring cultural awareness and understanding, and create some kind of path towards reconciliation. We have legacy spaces and legacy schools. They're all um, places to welcome these conversations, and like I said before, bring voice, bring awareness, bring education, and then hopefully bring action to reconciliation.
There's been a series of virtual events, if you will, that have been going on. There's going to be another one today at 2 p.m. Can you tell me a bit about these virtual events?
Well, they've been going on all month as a part of Indigenous History Month, and they've taken place virtually in Halifax and Toronto and Winnipeg, and then today's last event of the month has got a bunch of different performances. There's William Prince, and there's a D-Day Shub, and some hip covers. What else? I don't want to leave anybody else.
Well, I
Crystal
see there's
Shawanda, Wolfstag,
GR Grit, Rebecca,
GR Grit,
Rebecca Thomas. Yeah.
Rebecca Thomas. And so these things are, same thing, a kind of celebration of Indigenous culture, music, all kinds of different arts, programming, and again, conversation around this really important issue.
So Patrick, was this something that your brother and you discovered together, or was it through your brother's interest and action that got you interested? Or was this something that you guys shared together throughout his life?
Well, this is something we've always talked about. And, like I said, Gord has a long history of caring about Indigenous people and Indigenous culture and this country. I was an anthropology major at Concordia University, your hometown.
Yeah.
And so I've always had an interest in culture, Indigenous cultures around the world, and particularly in Canada. And we've always talked about, it was Gord's feeling that this country really wasn't a country until it could acknowledge its whole history, and to start taking action and inclusivity in thousands of years of history and culture. And we were talking about this for years and years. This is something that's always bothered Gord, and I'm just glad he got an opportunity to say how he really feels, when he did. And like I said before, we're only happy to carry on, that message.
A few years before he passed, there was a project that he did. It was a children's book, I believe, and there was a short film that was involved too. I remember hearing about this project that he did. That I believe he narrated. He did the music for it. It was outside of the hip. It was almost like a solo project that he did. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Was this the water keeper?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that much about it, other than that he was a big part of the Waterkeepers swim, drink, fish organization.
Yeah.
And did a lot of work on for them, and I think he was part of the board of directors, but a documentary was made. I don't know what year. I think Robert Kennedy Jr. was involved, but he, I guess, through some connection to his association with the swim drink fish, he probably was handpicked to do the narration for it.
So it seems like he always had an interest because, you know, it's well known that, you know, Bobby Kennedy was really early on in telling people that we need to clean up our planet. This is something, conversations he was having. It's funny when you go back and you watch that stock footage now, it's so topical, but we really didn't listen. So it seems like Gord really just wanted us to have not only more inclusive Canada, but just a better Canada, because we really do, you know, and being someone who is Canadian, I feel so, I feel so torn sometimes, because at the base of it, I feel so proud that I'm Canadian, because I feel like generally across the board, you know, we're pretty civil with each other. We're pretty caring. We do somewhat care about our people. We're pretty well respected on the world stage. At the base of it, we seem like we're good people, but I just think we could be that much better. And it would be nice that if we would recognize our real history. Unfortunately, as tough as that is to deal with sometimes, it is important to shine the light on it. And it is important to give those people that have felt that alienation for so long a time to get across how they're feeling, so we can really have a conversation. Because there's the other side of it, where someone like myself, who really does feel passionate about everybody having an equal playing field, can somewhat feel frustrated and not know, how can I get involved? What can I do? How does the DWF make that available for someone like myself who would want to really get involved?
Well, there are a number of ways. I think really I see the Downie Wenjack Fund as a sort of I guess like maybe a launching pad to further action. It's a great place with a lot of resources to get information, to get educated, and also to find ways in which this awareness and stuff can take action. Particularly in the place of schools. We have these legacy spaces in which a lot of corporations and different agencies create a space within their buildings to celebrate Indigenous culture, recognize history, and then also have you know, conversations about it. Just speaking to what you said before, I think Canada, as Gord said, wasn't a country until it really recognized its true history, and the people that were here. And I think in many ways, I have an American passport. I have American children. I've spent a long time in the United States, and I was able to see Canada from a slightly different perspective, I think, than maybe some Canadians have, which is, I think Canada spends a lot of time looking at the U.S. and in the process has developed a bit of an angel complex, and that is, in comparing ourselves to them, we feel we're better, and that we do these things better, that we aren't as bad. But to a large degree, obviously the issues in America are exclusive to them, but they exist here. Obviously not on the same scale, but they are daily problems for racialized Canadians and Indigenous Canadians across the country. So, it's very easy to say, oh, we're better than them, but we also have a lot of work and a lot of self-reflection to do.
Being someone who's from Quebec, we've always felt like we're a little bit outside, we're a little bit different. So it was interesting when I started traveling outside of Quebec more than when I lived in the US for a while too. So it's really interesting to see how people see Canadians from an outside perspective. And then when they travel to different parts of Canada, they go, but you guys are really different in Quebec. So I think it's a matter of us trying to embrace our differences, and it's just about communication, and having those conversations. So I think something like this is a great opportunity to start those conversations, especially for people that don't necessarily feel any kind of hate in their heart, but they just don't know where to start.
Right.
And it's
Right.
funny because I've got a 13-year-old and I've got a 16-year-old, and they're
Mhm.
looking at a lot of the stuff that's going on in the world. And I'll say, do you find these kind of things happening in your school? Do you guys find that there's a lot of people that feel marginalized, and they're like, no, we just like people for people. So it seems like the younger generation um, are are going to do what the younger generation is supposed to do, be better than us.
Yeah, I have a lot of hope, and I had the same experiences with my children that they, um, you know, maybe it's just a generational thing, but the openness and their attitudes towards differentness, is starkly different than their older generation. And I'm with you. I believe that they have a lot more openness in their heart, and they weren't perhaps born into the same prejudice and things that maybe we were.
All right, I wouldn't be a good journalist if I didn't have you on here and not ask you this. Tell me the craziest story about your brother on stage, because I remember being a Montrealer, hearing all the legendary stories about the 5 nights in a row that they would do at the Spectrum that were completely sold out. Um, Tell me a crazy story about your brother on stage, because he was probably one of the best frontmen ever to pick up a mic.
Um, yeah, well, yeah, he was a good front man. And it was hard to take your eyes off him. Um, I saw them a lot of times,
Yeah,
and
I can imagine you probably
in
saw
the
some really.
early days.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I guess I have to say, I don't know, his performances overall. There was nothing really that scripted about them, and they always had the potential for something to happen.
Yeah,
I can't really pluck out anything really wild and crazy. I mean, it all seemed kind of wild
wild
and
and
crazy.
crazy, right?
Um,
Would you? I mean, I imagine you went out on the road with them sometimes for multiple dates, right?
sure, yeah.
So,
Uh,
would it be fair to say that you didn't know which Gord would show up on each given night? Could it be a completely different guy in terms of his performance? Because I know I saw them multiple times, and it could be I mean, yes, it was the same voice, but it could be a completely different performance.
yeah, and that really evolved over the years. I think, you know, uh, I have to say, over the years, and I did the last tour with him, and I had been on other tours in the earlier years, and I have to say, like on game days, so to speak, um, you know, he would get um, to the gig, to the venue. He was in sort of prep mode almost from the moment he woke up, and it was mostly a kind of quiet reflection, and you really didn't. It was hard to believe like how I guess maybe it was part nerves, but he had quite a routine that would evolve almost like a professional athlete, but it was all gearing up towards that 2 hours that was going to happen in the evening. And having spent time with him, um, you know, before shows, after shows, or whatever, you just wouldn't recognize the person that came out on stage versus the person that was getting ready to go on stage
Yeah.
that whole day. So that was always kind of a fun thing to witness. Just that, you know, seeing somebody go from basically an everyday person to then go on stage and become this very
Yeah.
um, whatever Gord was.
And then he would come off and would be right back to that same person, right?
Yeah.
Patrick, thanks for taking the time to talk to us today. If people want to get more information, where would they go to find out more information about the DWF?
Well, you can go to the Downie Wenjack Fund webpage. All the socials are there too. And I think that's probably about it as far as I know.
Perfect.
Yeah. What is it? DownieWenjack.com?
DownieWenjack.ca. Yeah.
That's it.
Thanks so much.
Right.
Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us today, man. It's really nice that you're carrying on your brother's work, and it's nice that you're doing the work too, because I think this is a great time for these conversations to be happening, because I think people are listening now, and there's more focus on these kind of issues. So hopefully, a lot of good can come out of this.
Yeah, we're just coming to the end of Indigenous History Month, but it should be 12 months of the year,
Should be
really.
every day. Yeah.
Learn the history, learn the culture. It's good for us as Canadians. And yeah, thank you very much, Jason, for the time, and good luck to you.